This podcast contains adult themes and language. The views expressed here are our own opinions and experiences. We are not medical professionals.
In this podcast, we discuss our opinions about mental health, sobriety, addiction, and our pursuit of happiness and peace. This is Sober Mind.
Oh, yeah, everybody.
I guess I should move my microphone towards my mouth.
Yeah. Good morning, Odie. Odie first.
Odie first.
Lisa second.
Morning, Lisa.
Everybody's first in my heart, John.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
But, you know, if you're
Cheesy, but I like it.
if you're not first, you're last.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Man, what a week.
It's been a week. It has definitely been a week. A good week, but it's a lot.
Okay. We'll let the background music die down. Then we'll get to discussing
Did you run
gratitude.
the announcements?
I did not. I'm just getting into my zone.
Warming the diesel up.
Yeah. Oh man, it's that time of the year too.
You got to hit the glow plugs, babe.
That's right.
What are we going to do? This shot of ether?
Yeah, right in the air hose.
All right.
All right. Let's get some music going and we'll start the show here.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
That's right. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sober Mind.
You got to do the disclaimer.
I already did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, you didn't hear.
I didn't hear it.
Well, you and Patrick were
just-
having this complete
Oh,
sidebar.
Yeah, we're going already.
We went on a tangent. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, well, good morning. Welcome to Sober Mind. My name is John.
I'm Judy.
And I'm Patrick.
Here we have grown folk conversations about mental health, sobriety, and life journeys. Today's subject at hand is the power of addiction and the addiction of power. We're going to be discussing some highlights from Gabor Mate's TEDx stream that he did. I got the link to that in our description of the show notes. So Gabor Mate was introduced to us by Patrick. Patrick's a huge fan. He is he's an MD by trade, and I think then he branched out into more of the neuroscience of everything. So anyway,
he's also a published author of numerous
Several books.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff around ADHD. And then, and a lot of themes I often bring up in the realm of hungry ghosts, which is a common book that appears in this addiction journey. And he, in fact, in the video, he speaks of what Hungry Ghosts is, and then just all the themes that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, when you recommended the book to Judy and I, beginning of this year, we had started reading it, and he never, I don't know if in the book he does a description like he does in the video. He's like, the hungry ghosts are, big bellied, thin neck, tiny little mouths, so they eat and they never get fulfilled.
Yep.
And a lot of that comes from like Buddhist nature. It's one of the 7 hells, and you can also see it in a bunch of Japanese ukiyo-e prints when they were dealing with famine and stuff. That's how a lot of the either ghosts or those creatures were depicted, as giant bellies, small mouths, gangly arms, because they will be in a state of eternal restlessness. They will never be sated.
That's me at like a pizza buffet. Okay, before we get started on all this stuff, let's go gratitude. We'll just go round robin. I'm ready to go.
Go.
My gratitude for this week is you and you, Patrick. I really appreciate you guys being in my life. Patrick, when you showed up the other day, you said, hey, can I bring that Tupperware dish back over? And I was like, sure. I didn't know you're bringing the 2 hellions. So Patrick showed up.
Lively for a few.
Yeah, Patrick showed up at our door, and he had his son and daughter with him, and it was really a pleasant surprise. I was really reveling in that. It's just one of those weird things that you don't expect, and then I was really enjoying the moment. Like Flynn was just I know you see him every day, obviously, but I noticed a marked difference in how he was being perceptive or something. He's just like, "Hey, John." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
What's up, little dude?"
He's definitely, I think they're definitely getting used to seeing us and being around us. They're definitely not nervous or reserved or anything like that around us anymore. They just kind of waltz in. If he wasn't in front, they just would have walked right in the door. Hey, what's up? I'm gonna go outside and play. Okay.
It was a pleasant surprise to have them be curious and hanging out. I don't know. That sounds. People are like, "Yeah, John, they're just kids." I'm like, "Well, we don't have children." Then full disclosure, after you guys left, we both went, "Oh man, we're so glad we don't have kids."
Yeah, it's one of those double-edged sword things, right? They're curious and engaged, but they're they go a million miles an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was something I wasn't used to.
Yeah, we'll live vicariously. Just bring them over 20 minutes and take them away.
Yep.
But and again, Patrick, I know you and I have been really establishing a relationship over the last year and a half-ish or so, just kind of a slow burn. But I appreciate you being in our lives. I really do. And I was thinking about the gratitude. So, Judy, I wanted to tell you that I really do appreciate you. I know I've said it before, but I think, we got sober over 2 years ago, and one of the things that we discovered like 4 or 5 months in was that we were starting to reinvigorate our relationship. And we've been together for over 20 years.
Refined ourselves.
Yeah. So that's been a pleasant surprise. Yesterday, real quick, this is the longest gratitude you'll hear. We're doing a kitchen renovation project, and I really almost destroyed this $400 portion of our butcher block countertop, cutting the sink hole out. And when we're doing these home projects, I think you'll attest to this, Patrick. You get into the hyper focus of the ADHD, get tunnel vision on some things, and there's a mental exhaustion that comes with it too, to where then you want to be in the moment and do things slowly. I get to the point to where I'm starting to get tired. I should just quit for the day, and then but I've got these goals and deadlines in mind. So with this, I really jacked it up, and I got so fucking frustrated and pissed, and I try to catch myself, like, dude, every day you're working on your mental health aspects and trying to approach things with new emotion, not the old emotion of how you've been reacting for 50 plus years. So I kind of had to accept the mistake, and I had a desire to come up and to get you to basically talk to me about this. So I just went up, I said, "Judy, I fucked this up. I need you to come here and talk to me." So she came down and she did exactly what I needed. And then when she's like, "Okay, well, let's figure out how to fix it." The stuff I know I need to do, but the ADHD mind, it's just, like, "Oh man, I fucked this up. Now we're gonna have to spend $400 and blah, blah, blah." And I just was like, stop, calm down. And that's what Judy did for me. And I realized, she talked me off the ledge. She said, let's do this, and let's get it fixed. And sure enough, it turned out really good. You can't even tell that we made a huge mistake, because it turned out phenomenal. But
it looks great.
Thank you. And then I got done while I was doing that and fixing it, I really thought about how important it is that you and I have this partnership in our relationship, and that, in the past, I think ego got in the way of not being able to accept help when I need it from you. Mm-hmm. So I love you. Thank you.
I love you too.
I didn't help the situation when I was on a run, unbeknownst to me, and I'm just running by, and I see him in the garage, and I'm like, "Get to work," and then I run off, let him deal with his own shit.
I know. I was like, "Patrick," he's like, "I gotta go."
No, it worked out really well.
Yeah. Anyway, my gratitude is for friendships and relationship, especially for you two.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
And back at you.
Thank you.
I'm just in awe how you two talk about your relationship. And then at the same time, I want to give credence. I feel the same way, John, about ours being the slow burn. Usually with the ADHD, you want to be like hyper focused and just do all the things at once. And like, it feel like I would always be needing to validate the friendship. So always trying to do activities. And if he doesn't see me, then I feel hurt but we've just known that we're on this journey together. And, when we see each other, we can. And, when we're together, we're present and, make it worthwhile. And then we just slowly stack those quality moments over time. And
Yeah.
it's been amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay.
I'm just grateful to sit here and listen to all this. This is so cool. Yeah, I'm so grateful and excited to be in this environment right now with the two of you, and to be able to go through these experiences and to be able to understand and experience each one as they come instead of looking on to the next one. But I'm just excited to be here right now and be here with you guys.
I'll give high fives.
Okay. Want to get into it?
Are we ready?
Well, I was going to do gratitude.
I thought that was your gratitude. You're like, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I recognize yours as well. The feeling was mutual.
Oh, got it.
So.
Got it. Okay.
My gratitude comes from, I know we talked about the ADHD stuff last time, and the desire, and we'll talk about it more today, is the desire to always be on a quest the desire to always be elsewhere, to not be here. You're always trying to escape. When it's always trying to escape, yes, that's a bad thing. But it also gave me a lot of my strengths of, like being able to explore and go on new journeys and go on like a quest and, like always be, like on the move and enjoying many different experiences in life. And I realized that as I reflected back on the week, doing the items like smoking the brisket and coming visiting you guys. And we had a nice rainy day off. All of us did yesterday at my house. So my wife went out and got Lego sets for each of us, and we sat down and did some Lego sets. My point is that same item that drove me to never be complacent or okay in myself is also like a driving factor that just loves exploring and just doing new things and all that. And that is, I often feel like without that drive, I would not have been I would not be on this journey to better myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like always just, I have this fear that like, if I become complacent with myself, then that's it. Right? That's it. I mean, like literally that is it. Like, oh, I'm okay and I'm done. But the thing is like, it's not forever, meaning like I'm okay with myself now and put myself in a new situation. I get to learn about myself in a new way. Right. And then like the journey starts all over again. Like, how do I be okay here? How do I be okay here? And it's like that once I realized that I could turn that journey inward instead of just seeking elsewhere and continue that journey, but just keep it inward on a lot of stuff, man, like that, I am very grateful for that, because that seems to yield an infinite more amount of bounty.
That's awesome. Yay!
So it's your sort of the patience with yourself and self-discovery that you're... Yeah.
I think it also allows you to be open for new experiences.
Yes.
So let's back up real quick. What I heard you in the beginning say that you were worried about the complacency about yourself.
I've always had this underpinning thing of like, so we talked about like always seeking elsewhere, always seeking for like external items. And that's where addiction comes into play, right? Like you're always trying to fill a hole.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how to validate yourself.
Right.
And in the ADHD mind, you know, like we always talked about the desire to be at the end of the race rather than enjoying the process. The end of the race for me always was to be validated, to be complacent, right? But that was the carrot that just kept on moving.
Got it. Yeah.
I had a fear of like the dog that, you know, now the dog actually caught the car. Like as in like, if I am complacent, then there is no, I don't know how else to describe it. Like I had this fear of like the journey would be over.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's got it. That makes sense. So that's also a natural byproduct of our minds, and that you may experience this. So brace yourself. I'm ready for it. And that is, we've been training for this half marathon, which is next weekend. And even Mate talks about this, and you know, it's the endorphins and the dopamine of doing things. Sometimes neuroscientists, they remind us that the pursuit of the activity is the activity in itself. Where I'm going with that in a real long way is that, especially when I was drinking the day after a half marathon, I'd get really depressed. So I find that even so, when we ran that 10 miler 2 weekends ago, the day after, I was just like, because I was getting mentally ready for that. And then when you get done, my mind is like, well, that's done.
Yeah. What's next?
You know, it's bizarre how we do that. So I've been really trying to work on, to kind of to your point of the complacency. It's like, and I realized I caught myself already doing it on our run. Like, what are we doing next? Do you want to do speed 10K? And you're like, yeah, goddamn, let's just get through this one. I'm like, oh, okay.
The next journey will present itself when it's ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think you also have to, well, it would be, you know, a good idea that when you're done to just sit and revel in the fact of your completion.
Yeah, I know.
I know it's
That's
probably
easier
hard.
said than done.
Yeah, I know it's probably hard, especially for ADHD.
Yeah, we're sitting over, hey, you got any more of those marathons? Yeah, you got
All right, that was insightful, Patrick. Thank you. Okay, Judith, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay. So just to cue it up again, we're going to be discussing the power of addiction and the addiction of power. I got a lot to say about that last portion. Yeah, so
I just have a couple things to bring up, and then we can just kind of organically let it flow how we want. The first one is, what does addiction mean to you?
Oh.
Either one of you can take that one and run.
I'm going to co-opt Dr. Mate's, you know, because that's what resonated with me when I read. So thank you, Judy, for putting the link in the description for those that want to check it out. Please do. Dr. Mate also has a short documentary called The Wisdom of Trauma, in his book of In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts talk about this a lot. And this is about addiction is not what we think it is.
Yes.
And he opens all his talks, or has a primary point to say that addiction is at its simplest a short-term release or desire for an action that causes consequences or harm in the long run over a longer time. And it's just that simple.
Yeah.
And then it can be applied to any addictive behavior like gambling or eating or, you know, screen time, electronics, anything. Yeah. So we'll go into more of it, but that for me is just, I resonate with that definition of addiction.
Yes. Perfect. I want to take a moment to acknowledge some people. Good morning, Michelle, and good morning to people on the Podbean chat.
Morning.
Yeah, I can't see the chat. We need to figure out how to enlarge that from way over here. But thanks for your support. As a friendly reminder, if you're listening to the podcast, it would really help us out if you went to youtube.com/@sobermind and subscribe to the channel. Man, we're at 497. We're 3 away from 500. I'm not even going to bring up our contest we had 4 months ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, Patrick, so that's a good point. And that is, so can I answer the question of what does addiction mean to me? I love this, that Mate put that in there. And this is what Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones said is the contortions that we go through just enough to be ourselves for a few hours. Mm-hmm. It was really nice to get some validation about addiction because, like you said, Patrick, it's, when someone says addiction, I think all of us immediately go, heroin user sitting in the corner of an alleyway somewhere.
Exactly.
It's not that. I love how Mate and other neuroscientists have said that, alcohol and drugs and all these other things, they're not addictive. There's really not such a thing that humans that have. I know people are like, oh, hold on, John, that's wrong. No, it's not that. It's dopamine and endorphin release. It's the things so those things are catalysts that make us feel comfortable. People eat to excess. Why? You're not hungry. It's the warm, comforting feeling that people get from it.
It's temporarily feeling a hole.
Yeah. And then, later on chased by the regret of those actions as well. And that comes with a lot of it. And Dr. Mate, I love how vulnerable he was in this TEDx too, when he says that, oh shit, this shocked me. So he was delivering a baby and he was scheduled to deliver a baby and he left the hospital to go to a music store to buy. He has an addiction of buying classical
compact discs,
music CDs, and he spent like $8,000 1 week on them, and he missed the delivery of this childbirth that he was supposed to do.
Yep.
So those are those addictions. So to me, it's the desire to escape from our own mind. For me, that's what that is. With alcohol, there was for me, the ADHD and the anxiety that I've always had, it's compounded by the fact that it always seems like I'm observing myself. Something happened somewhere with my brain, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. I think it might have been from extremely heavy drinking to where something's not self-regulated properly, to where I feel like I'm just like sitting 2 inches behind my eyes, watching me watch the world. And I talked about that with my therapist. She said, that's not unusual. That's just something that you're going to end up having to work through. There's no cure for it. So you have to acknowledge it. I said it before, like Judy and I could be standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, and I think she'd be able to really appreciate it. And I'd be like, yeah, that's fantastic. Can we go do something else?
I've seen it. I'm done.
It's because it's hard to describe, but so that's what alcohol did for me, is it seemed like it gave me that peace and quiet. And I know that sounds a little bit cliche. A lot of drug users or addicts will say, yeah, well, that's what happens when you're self-medicating yourself. But what I didn't realize is that, so it's that endorphin, dopamine gateway, and that something happens in our childhood to where we all of a sudden, that the pathway to be able to chain dopamine and endorphins together gets broken.
Yep.
That's what leads to addiction. So it's something that happens somewhere within our youth. I think that's really interesting.
He talks about several examples of this, and you say 10 or 15 years ago, I would even argue most likely sooner, and he even uses his example about how his addictive behaviors happened well before he could even really affect it. It happened. He was born in 1944 in Budapest.
Yeah.
And basically, as soon as he was born, he was basically passed around, because he
And he's a Jew.
He was a Jew, yes.
So do the math on that one.
Yeah, so basically, like, in hiding all the time, being passed from family to family. In fact, that they, they tried to get a doctor to see him because he was crying so much, and they're like, we can't have a baby that's crying so much, right? But the thing was, like, his mother, was quite obviously stressed.
Yeah.
From before he was born. And this is what I've always been trying to say is, like, this is kind of what sets us up is if our regulating mechanisms are like under stress like that, and we don't have the ability to cope, and it's going to like not develop the whole dopamine endorphin chains correctly. And those are important because those are what give us motivation. Those are what help drive us to
drive,
to eat, to survive, to love, to like do all the wonderful things.
Plus, you have the mother who is, if she's stressed, all of her cortisol is being dumped into her system, which is in turn being flushed into the infant system.
Right. So I think this is very important that addiction is not a genetic thing. There are genetic predispositions, but not predeterminations.
Yes.
And in fact, there's a very important concept here. This is a much more complex thought to pull out of this, but he speaks of generational trauma that causes addiction in there, that there's items, these are learned behaviors that are passed on. So basically it's a lot of the experiences that form or doesn't allow the brain to form that ability to regulate the dopamine and endorphins like it should.
The Buddhists have the whole belief in karma, and there's individual karma, and then there's collective karma, which is karma that happens to a collection of group of people instead of just the individual. So
it's just a different way of describing it for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's what's important about that.
I think for me, addiction, when I was younger, it was just based on like you said, the alcohol, the drugs, the druggies that are sleepless or homeless on the streets. That's what I thought addiction was. And I thought, well, I'll never be an addict. I will never be an addict. I am not that type of person. But it doesn't really matter. It has no distinction between, homeless or people with homes. There's functioning alcoholics all over the place.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a lot of self-validation that I know alcoholics in my professional life that, they talk that way. It's like, I've ran into folks where they're like, John, how you going? I'm like, I'm doing good. I've been sober for over 2 years. They're like, man, I really need to do that. But there's this, you can see the glint in their eyes. They're like, but I pay my taxes and I'm a good person.
So this is like the core of addiction that I think basically we as a society have wrong, and they talk about this too. So the other TED Talks that you shared with us and in Gabor Mate's book point to a unique phenomenon that happened in the Vietnam War. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but like over 20% of the soldiers deployed over there were using heroin. I mean, like hashish, it was like rampant, so much to the point like that the government was preparing items and strategies for when they return. We're going to have this influx of users and it's going to create like a whole issue. I mean, like that is a lot of people, and it's a big item, but they came back and they found that like that use rate did not correlate.
No. When they came back, they had jobs to go to, they had families to go to, they had things to
right. So
to do.
This idea of like, I'm going to step out and do crack for a couple hours and just become addicted, and then now I'm hooked on it. Over a longer period of time, yes, it would change your brain that you are reliant on it. But the addiction comes from, we try to treat it as why the addiction, right? And the real question is why the pain? And the fact is, over in Vietnam, there's a bunch of horrors and shitty things happening that they didn't have items to cope with and connections to be able to fulfill that, loving relationships and other items, family and other items to invest self into. And so that became the coping mechanism. It wasn't because they were addicted because it was just so rampant over there and they used it. They just didn't have any other coping mechanisms. So
Yeah.
that's where a lot of that translation started to happen. And I think this is the very important part, that trauma, not genetics, not societal upbringing, not your position in life on how much money your family makes. The only thing that is the common core of addicts is trauma. And I speak of trauma, and he goes about this in the wisdom of trauma. Trauma is not just like I was either sexually abused as a kid or anything like that. Trauma is a point that somebody disconnects from their emotions and is unable to process that.
Yep.
And what's the first thing you want to do? You have emotions that sit there. You want to leave. You want to not be there. You want to be somewhere else. And in fact, if you talk to addicts, ask them what their first experience is like with their use of choice. And most likely, like if they're honest, it is a note of reprieve, or,
They actually could feel themselves.
Right. Like the Keith Richards quote.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Mate said, addiction is a response to human suffering.
Yep.
An attempt to escape suffering, if only temporarily.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lisa makes a good point. It's not the substance, right? Like if I take the ION away from the addiction, not actively using, I'm still an addict. And the work on that is the piece that is involved in recovery.
Yep.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Yep. The object is not to stay sober by avoiding drinks. The object is to build a life worth living for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the journey that I'm still on. I really notice it this time of year. Autumn, it's like my favorite time of the year.
Well, yeah, it was our full-on party time.
Yeah, but I was coming back from a run the other morning, and I was addressing that. I was thinking, what's this itch that's going on? Even Judy said that all that day. She's like, you seem like you're wearing an itchy sweater. Because I guess I have this energy, and I really realized it, and I felt guilty because I thought I was making her anxious all day, but it's this fucked up, deep-seated desire to celebrate. And that is, I'm happy. This is the irony of it. I'm happy. My life is going very well. I'm comfortable. Everything is good. But so I feel like there's a celebratory aspect that's missing. So I used to drink when things were going good until I was drinking all the time. But the chain is broken there with the dopamine and endorphins. I look at my recovery as a success when I'm able to, on the few moments of the day and or week, to sit back and just be happy and peaceful with me. So that's what constantly takes a lot of work still, from the moment I wake up till the time I go to bed.
I mean, that's, behavior at its core, our inability. I've talked about the ego always wants to validate self. We always want to feel valid where we are at, right? If we are not valid, then we are not seen, we are not recognized, me. But on the behavior side, it's like, I'm feeling good. I want to feel good, but I'm not there. Like, where's my feel good juice? And I'm not talking about alcohol or cocaine or whatever your method is. Like, you want to be valid, so you want to have that and those endorphins and the dopamine running through your system. I am feeling good. Validate me right now. And if it doesn't come because we don't know how to regulate that or shape that, what are we going to do?
Never been taught how to.
Never been taught how to. Oh, that no wonder booze is like so popular for celebration, right?
Right.
Like if they have not been taught how to do that, like that was easily me. Feeling good on Friday night,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all they have to do is really is just watch a commercial.
Right? Yeah, this goes. That taps into all the beer commercials and hard liquor commercials too, right?
Yeah, you make a good point. It was giving me something to ponder, Patrick, and that is, I just started to rationalize it. I think you were looking at me like, oh shit, John just figured something out. And that is, so I think, when I was walking home after the run and I have that itch to celebrate, it's because I feel good, but there's an immediate, like, how do you keep feeling good?
How do I stay on this high?
Don't get it back into, don't have a depressive episode. That's the whole, how do I live in the moment? And
keep
how
this
do I
good time going?
Yeah.
So
How do I stay in this high?
I feel good. And that's what it was with drinking. It's, man, I would, for the next 4, 5, 6 hours until we'd black out. It was.
I know that feeling too well, and go with me on a little journey.
All right.
Like, just try to imagine that feeling right as that you're running. I mean, like, what you felt in the core of, like, where you felt that itch. Now, try and, like, reflect on, like, one of those Friday nights where it's been the drinking gets good into the evening, and it becomes that point of that threshold where you've decided that tomorrow doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, that I'm
just there.
Superman, and I'm just going to power on through, and the only answer to feeling good right now is just more booze.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do those feel like very similar incidents? Like, in the core of, like, that ever burning desire to be, that itch can never be sated.
Yeah.
I want to keep the good train.
ghost.
I want to keep the good thing going.
Yep. Feeding the hungry ghost.
Yep. So I have another topic, which I think we've already kind of touched on, but I'll bring it up anyway. How has addiction affected your life?
You want me to go, Patrick?
Do it.
This is a tough one. How has addiction affected my life? You know what? Addiction has affected my life.
Yeah, yours started from little before you were born, probably.
Well, addiction has affected my life by making me a better person. If we go full circle with it, addiction has ruled my life for all of my life. To the point to where I started to become addicted to my own consciousness and the desire to be happy and satiated with myself.
Okay.
That's, if you want to get down to brass tacks, I'm addicted to
being sober.
Yeah. It's bizarre. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that, but that's the truth of it. Judy and I were laying in bed last night, and I was telling her about the itch to drink and celebrate. And she said, that wouldn't be good. She made a comment, I can't remember what it was about. I'm like, I'm not gonna drink. It's just I'm well aware of what would happen. God, geez, it would absolutely destroy my life. And the amount of guilt and remorse that I would have, I think I'd have to go fucking check myself into a mental ward. I'd be a basket case. It's so profound and so raw still after 2 years of sobriety. So I just wanted to, Judy knows, but I wanted to clarify that, I'm not going to drink. That's not the journey that we're on is that. Anyway, I deal with addiction all the time too. And that is, whenever something is making me feel good, there's the need to keep that going somehow. And that is whether it's digging into technology. When I was on my Prozac journey, I got addicted to online shopping for a good stint too.
Yeah, bad news.
I was very conscious and well aware of it, that I was like, this is not good. But man, there was something super powerful about just clicking. I was feeling the anxiousness and the remorse already about like, this is not going to be good for our credit situation. And then there was a click buy now, and I was like, oh fuck, that felt good.
Mm-hmm, that instant rush.
Yeah, I got a little dizzy from it. It was just like, man. Yeah, so addiction, sorry, I'm talking in circles. I didn't really figure out how to dissect that, but addiction, how's it impacting my life? It impacts my life every second of every day.
Yeah.
And you know, if you want to even dig deeper into it, our audience knows addiction is something it's in my family tree, traced back to many generations. And you know, there's no one left in my family alive
except for your brother.
Except for my brother and my daughter, who is, you know, she'll be 30 years old next year, and she's 1,000% down the addiction rabbit hole and the ADHD journey, and she cannot stop to face any of this stuff and acknowledge it. That's what's tough too about the addiction, is just watching a family member go through it and deal with it. And then I don't know, I'm happy to be able to be that cliche of breaking the cycle.
We're happy too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, well said. Addiction is like the underpinning for me for everything as well. You know, like just that ever living drive to be seeking, you know, like addiction to technology or phones, or to be validated, other certain behaviors, you know, other chemicals. That's all been there along the journey, like, you know, and this even includes like certain behavior in dealing with people, because I couldn't deal with people, right? My point is with addiction is to the question that Mate posed is, you know, I felt myself broken and always seeking reprieve. And that stemmed from like, why the addiction? You know, and you know, in our society, we think that's either a moral deficiency or an upbringing. And I don't want to use the example of like a child in trauma, or, you know, that's gone through abuse, is that if they don't have the tools and that event is happening to them, and they're gonna either, and I've said this before, they internalize it, like, as in, this is happening to me because I am wrong, or I am broken, or I deserved it, right? Like, they don't know how to process that stuff. And so I didn't have the tools to understand a lot of the more complex things. And I thought like, well, you know, this is just who I am. I'm just broken. And so that kind of like just drove me to be the hungry ghost, to never be sated, right? Like, I am always in a state of broken. The question of why the pain, you know, like Mate begins to approach, rather than why the addiction, that has been the mirror, that has been the reflection on my inner journey from here. I remember, and I know a lot of people that go on the sobriety journey, and those in AA can speak to this. You know, this is the turning point of the dry drunks, in my opinion, is when the pain reaches so much, you know, that you're sometimes forced down sobriety, meaning like, I just need to get sober, right? And just not drinking is going to fix my problems. You quickly, there is a point that you realize that getting sober does not fix your problems.
Quickly.
Right? And this is where either some people either become the dry drunks and they just continue not drinking, or they relapse. And what I mean by this, there becomes a gate or a threshold that you realize that the addiction is not the problem. The inner work that lies within is greeting you and asking you to come and do that work. Meaning, like, we have to begin to reconnect to our emotions and, you know, begin to process and develop these toolkits. And that's what the scary part was. Like, I thought if I stopped drinking, I'd be fine. And then I'm like, oh, I'm smashing a bag of Reese's every other day. And like, now I'm just it goes from like, now I'm, you know, this is my self-dialogue. Like, now, instead of just being like a worthless drunk, now you're just like, you know, a worthless garbage piece of, you know, sloth. Just stuff your face there, buddy. You know, and it just continues, and to realize, like, you know, it takes time. It takes time to grow your little garden. It takes time to look inward, and really is the scary part. Like that was the underpinning of the fear to always keep moving. And, I realized that's what was a primary factor of not being sated, was the fear of what would happen if I sat and looked within. If I truly saw what was going on, and I truly saw was not being able to process, because I didn't know how to give it space. I didn't know how to recognize it, like, hey, this bad event happened outside of your control. Mm-hmm. You're not the center of the universe like you think you are, ego.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You didn't deal with trauma because you were a bad person or morally deficient. And that's just something that happened.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and to let those items go, to diminish ego, because ego wants to be so proud that they will hold on to traumatic events thinking that they were in control of it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I was little and my parents got divorced. I was only 5, and my parents got divorced, and I thought it was my fault. There's something wrong with me that they are not staying together. It's my fault that's happening. And so you're right. You just, as a kid, without somebody saying it's not your fault, even if they did tell me it was not my fault, which I'm sure they did, I still took it as it being my fault, and I'm the one that's broken.
It's a process. This isn't just like a recognition of it's not your fault. It's the tools and the toolkits to actually process with that emotion. Mm-hmm. Right? What is this making me feel like? What is it really touching inside? And that, for me, is kind of what addiction has been in my life. It's just been the ever motivating factor of the fear of myself. What's the other quote? There's 3 things that addicts are afraid of.
Oh, yeah. Death, others, and
themselves. Inside.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Their own mind. Yeah. I think for how addiction has affected my life.
Oh, yeah. Judy. How's addiction?
I can take both sides of it. I mean, the side of when I was younger and how it basically just, I turned everything off except for what I wanted to feed that hungry ghost, and everything else was just, I turned it off. I didn't pay attention to it at all. And there's a lot of things that I wish I would have paid attention to because they would have benefited my life now. But then at the same point, I feel that addiction now has really, really benefited me to be able to sit back and turn that mirror inside and start doing the internal work that I need to do to make myself a whole human being.
Yep. This is at the end of Mate's speech, he talked about on the other side of the being seeking power. He talked about the ones that would never be sated and are always on that journey. Mm-hmm. And then he talked about the Buddha and Christ, about how they were presented the power of the earthly powers and denied it,
And what did we as society do to Buddha and Christ?
Yeah, right. They're like, they talk about lighting the lamp within. This is learning the power to validate self, right? Like, if the hamster wheel is always motivating you by seeking outward, you will never be, you will be that forever hungry ghost. Mm-hmm. But if you can build that within, with the motivating power within, to be the lamp unto yourself, to learn to validate yourself. And, that's why, the kingdom of heaven is within, mm-hmm. right? It's the journey inward that needs to be done,
I think going on to our next topic, I think that it is sad the way addicts are treated in America, in the world basically. But I can only go off of America because I'm in America. But the way that addicts are treated as far as being neglected and it's their fault and they chose to be this way, and there's something wrong with them and they need to be either arrested or put on the streets or put in a mental facility or so on and so forth. I think the way that they're treated now is it doesn't help the situation whatsoever. It just compounds everything that, is going on with that one individual
re-traumatizes
person.
them.
Yeah.
The tools for curing that pain within, the dopamine and endorphins that we talk about for motivation, are often tied with love. These are long-lasting relationships. And I think it speaks to, how we categorize addicts. We're like, they're heroin and they're out on the bench or whatever. We can easily point to them because it's easy to make them the other. But alcohol is super insidious, and that's one to look at. Like, we as a society accept the incessant binging and pushing and everything like that. And like, that's why understanding what an addict is very confusing to us, because we think it's to the point where it's like they've made enough moral indecisions that they're like on bad times because of their own moral deficiency, right? We just ascribe it to that, but we haven't seen like its other items. And in fact, this is very representative in the opiate epidemic as well. Like, there are people, like, we hand out opiates as great tools for physical recovery. These are even more pure than some of the other drugs that are out on the black market that we think of people getting addicted to. And not everybody gets addicted to them.
No, there was a good example. Your grandmother goes into the hospital
And breaks her hip.
They put her on opiates to deal with the pain while they do the surgery and it's all fixed and everything. And when she comes out of the hospital, she's not an addict.
Yep.
She's not going to go onto the streets and go get some
and
heroin.
This is the mental health side of our society that I want to like begin to address, because those drugs are prescribed for physical recovery, and that's what we just assume that they're as, right? Oh, it's just a physical recovery, fine. But what we find, the people that get addicted to them, like any other addict, is trauma.
Oh, right.
There, it's relieving
Yeah.
a mental state that is not being addressed, and that's the problem. So we're like, here's these pills to heal physically. Well, what about the system to heal mentally? Right? What does that system look like?
Which unfortunately is a little broken at this point.
And if you wanted, and Mate also says, if you wanted to design a system that did the opposite of what you're trying to achieve, of how do you heal mentally?
This is the perfect system.
This is the perfect system to be the opposite of it, because you criminalize the behavior.
Right.
So if they get caught, you remove the societal strengths and connections that they have, right? You further isolate them. You degrade the behavior down to like where other violent behavior is taught and or needed. You put them in a survival mode, right? This is creating a state of other. You reduce other resources, meaning like, for addicts, like he talked about Mate talked about his time when he was in Vancouver, like the amount of death that occurred outside of the actual drugs is so huge because of the comorbidities, because they just don't have access to services. Now that you've given them a felony, that removes them from a lot of either other social services, basic abilities to live and find housing,
to get a job.
Like it's a cascading domino effect that is just creating further isolation. Here's a person that didn't have the tools to cope with certain things in their life, like, and there are stories in his book, about kids that have been sexually abused, and like we see the file as the detective presented to him, and you're like, oh my gosh, that 8-year-old, whatever. And like, revisit the same person 20 years later of a system that failed them, and they're out on the streets, in dealing with drugs. And now that same person we look at and be like, oh yeah, that was their own bad decision to be out on the streets.
Yeah,
right?
that was their choice.
It's like, seriously, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
And you're starting to touch on that, and that is, we're all guilty of it. When we look at an addict, the reason why we're repulsed by it is because we're afraid that that'll be us. Mm-hmm. So we're going down the big pharma rabbit hole. But there's sorry, I don't want to promote a lot of stuff, but there's a really good mini series on Netflix that stars Matthew Broderick. He plays Sackler, the CEO of Purdue Pharma, and they really get into the nitty gritty of the whole OxyContin methodology and how it was developed, and we could go down a huge rabbit hole with this, Patrick, but
that'll be another show.
that's the monetization of addiction that goes way farther than just pharmaceuticals. It's down to the McDonald's DNA and how the menu is set up, and how the smell of it driving by, and the golden arches, about how they subconsciously mimic a pair of breasts, and it gives us the warmth and the comfort and the need.
Insane.
And
the amount of science in it. I remember sitting on a Coca-Cola all hands sales meeting, and they talked about the science. They did studies on where they place their drinks at the end of the little cooler in the aisle is strategically there, has to be within a certain reach, and the calculus of why it needs to be on this shelf at Quick Trip and the other items are on this shelf, and how much value is per inch of shelf space for reaching. Before I go down that rabbit hole, to tie this back to the addiction of power, is power in itself is very addictive, because at its core is a desire to be validated. In Mate's TEDx talk, he talks about some great figures, not great as in like wonderful, but as great as in had a large impact on, society. And, this is like Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin, Genghis Khan. And he talked about how they all had either smaller stature of height, stature of height. Thank you. And then, came from an outsider for another and lived in another community.
Oh yeah.
But the point,
Hitler was not German.
He was Austrian.
Yeah. Stalin was not.
He was Georgian. He was not Russian.
Exactly. So these people were not even part of. They were out. Yeah, they were outsiders.
There's a deep-seated insecurity and a desire to be validated, and this is the rabbit, or not the rabbit hole, but the carrot that moves that I've tried to talk about, like for addiction. Like, if I have X power, then I will be validated. If that is your only approach for motivation, you will never be sated, and that's what continues. Same with excess greed. I'm assuming in like that. Or the Broderick thing with the Sackler, like a lot of these figures, we held up capitalism as like the ultimate end goal, and being validated in capitalism is being he who dies with the most toys, right? If you have the most money, you're the most successful, you're the most valid. You are valid in what you do as your existence and being if you have the most money.
But you're not necessarily happy.
There you go. Or, what I'm trying to say is like those who extort the system and use it to validate their own things are not our moral superiors.
Correct. If anything, they are equal or inferior.
Well, we are all in a state of fallen. We are all at some degree our own, a hungry ghost.
True.
We just wear different robes of our addiction.
Yeah.
For them, it is money and power. And, because those are so tangible a lot of times, there's certain institutions of our society that have held that up. We look at this in our corporate culture of being so output driven. You're not worthy unless you're producing X, Y, and Z, both hands full. Or hands full both ways in and out of the kitchen. Time to lean is time to clean. If you're not working on something, then you're wasting my time. Like this, you are always in a state of churn, always in a state of desire, always a state of being hungry.
So do you think our society, sorry, baby, do you think our society right now is just churning out more people, more hungry ghosts, because we are constantly, because basically that's what we're teaching society right now. This is how you have to be to live amongst us.
I think we're learning. The advent of technology is. I talked about there's a lot of great things about it. The ability to learn, to do this. Now we can reach out to many people, but ultimately for the feel good feelings, we talked about this. Like, I love our viewers, and I hope that some words ring true and or of benefit to you. But at the same time, I have to also understand that you are the viewers. If I am sick or I am ill, or if certain things happen, if I'm feeling an emotional distate, it is the people that are close to me physically that help provide that network of invariably we are physical beings, and we are stimulated by our environment around us, and that includes the physical connections that we've made with people.
We're bonding beings. We like to bond.
A hug from my wife, a hug from my kids, like fist bump from you, these genuine items, and being able to talk in person, like these are items that need to be developed and grown. But as technology has been more pronounced, there's more isolating factors. Like never have we been so connected and never more isolated at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? So if we are in a state of isolation and inability to process some of these items, we are going to create hungry ghosts. I'm not saying this is good or bad. It's just that we need to learn to change the dialogue on what addiction is. And that will be part of it. It's not like we're just talking about the drugs. No, if we're going to talk about addiction and filling that emptiness inside, let's talk about some of these behaviors and everything that do it. That's the scary part that a lot of people want to turn away from.
Yeah, they don't want to face that.
I'm not addicted, so I don't need to talk about it, right?
Right.
Although they can say that, but eventually, if they really examine their life, there's going to be one thing that they're addicted
that's
to.
the scary part. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. The scary part is only people that are mentally unstable need to talk about mental health.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? I don't need to talk about that shit. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Cram.
I have a few beers at the end of the week. I say hi and bye to my wife. I give my kids a hug in the morning. I'm good.
Yeah, and my doctor prescribed this, so it's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm talking about long-standing valued relationships with people, the strengths of humanity where we can create the bonds to be the lamp unto ourselves.
Yeah. I could probably go on with this. But
Be the change you want to see.
That's right. And it's the societal construct too, the fabric of all that makes us very malleable. To your point, the self-worth and the self-esteem issues and the acceptance, those are all the blended sausage making behind the scenes that also drives our unhealthy professional lifestyles and work patterns, and the acceptance of the power addicted. We don't have time to get into this. We got to, man, these shows are starting to go fast. Thank you everyone for participating in the chat. I know we haven't addressed everything, but
I wanted to say one. Odie said, "I'm addicted to sober mind. It makes me feel better."
I know,
Thank you, Odie.
That, he's looking for a sponsorship.
He's very self-aware.
But anyway, so there's, I've struggled with this in the last 6 months too. The whole professional life is sort of the catalyst of the subconscious depression when things aren't going right, and it spills into the personal life. And I don't know.
Well, that's why we're here. That we need to begin to talk about this and process it, because there is group karma or generational trauma, collective karma, or generational trauma that is outside of our ability to control. Like a lot of these older institutions were built out of fear and established certain behaviors. That's out of our control. I can say like, I'm going to do mental health stuff and I'm going to treat my trauma. But guess what? There's a shit ton of like institutions and, established items of behavior that we're not going to be able to address individually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. That's, I'm not trying to be here and be like, dang society, get off my lawn. Like, is it me that is wrong? No, it is the kids that are wrong. No, this is what we get to do. We get to sit here and talk about this and share and make relationships about that. Those instances to bond with my kids on like, why do we don't need to have temper tantrums over tying the shoe? Like no one raindrop blames itself for the flood.
Mm-hmm.
Live in every moment, be present as you can to establish those. And be honest with your hungry ghost, because that desire, we've talked about it, that is part of us as ADHD and addicts, the desire to be elsewhere. How can we cultivate that in a healthy manner, for that inward journey?
Yeah.
Well, you nailed it, Patrick, but that's a very painful journey to start with. And that is to have that heartfelt conversation with yourself to figure out what you can do to fix that little broken piece of yourself.
Yeah. It's for me, it's going in, turning inward and talking to that inner little girl that got hurt, and bringing her out of the corner that she's hovering in and putting my arms around her and saying, it's okay.
Hugs, not drugs. Sorry.
Thanks for that vulnerability, Ben.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it too, is accepting, this state of survival, that has been insidious in a lot of things that we've done, survival of the fittest, or vulnerability was always seen as a weakness, and I'm beginning to learn to find it as a strength,
Yeah.
because it binds us more than, what fear does.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Okay, here we are, top of the hour. We got to wrap it up. I know.
Another good show that I could have kept going on with.
Yep. Speaking of which, we're going to have to talk about our next week's show. So
I haven't thought of a topic yet.
Yeah, we're going to pick back up on ADHD.
Oh, that's right.
It's going to be the part 2.
ADHD.
We all just squirreled out there.
Yeah.
Woo! Welcome to the ADHD show.
ADHD part 2.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about it. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. We got to get our shit together and stay on track for that one somehow. Godspeed to us all.
Now that I got it in my head, I'll be able to hopefully do a nice write-up so that we can get some
so we're
stuff.
we'll dig into that, but we need to go ahead and wrap up this show. I want to thank everybody once again for the support.
Yes,
we're getting
thank you
close
so
to
much.
Getting close to 500 subscribers. Thank you for joining in on the Podbean chat. We got to figure out a way to get people to call in live on that as well. So yeah, fantastic discussion. This makes me feel good. Got a lot of comments on some of the shorts that we did last week. Some people, it's refreshing and really rewarding when I hear people say, thank you, I needed to hear this. Just little nuggets of
Dopamine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it for Sober Mind, Grown Folk Conversation. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for engaging in the chat. Thank you for all the support. Be kind to yourselves. Be patient with yourselves. You are loved.
The pillow. What it?
Don't squirrel out, Judy. We're got to end the show. Odie.
No, I was looking at. He just commented.
Odie, thank you for another great episode. Also, watch out for the pillow to not replace
Patrick next time.
I guess I was wrestling with it too much.
All right, y'all. We'll talk to you later. Hold on. I got to get to the end screen.
If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please contact the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. Also, if you need help with addiction recovery or someone you know, please check out Al-Anon. Be kind to yourself. Be patient with yourself. You are loved.